the Dogman, who used tools. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a story for you about a very unique Dogman. He was extremely intelligent, in my opinion, and he had a unique look I've never read anyone else describing. He also lived in Indiana, which is not exactly the most famous location for seeing things like the Dogman. What happened was that when I was 18, my parents started fighting with each other, and they sent me off to stay with my Uncle Luther in Indiana. This was 50 years ago now, so I can't remember all the details. I do remember that I was living on this farm, and that my uncle would get me up before dawn to go work with him on the farm. It was still dark out when we would set out in the morning, and that place was pretty creepy looking when it was dark. My uncle had been telling me that some animal, or person, had been stealing chickens from the coop lately, and he was confused about how it was being done. Some of the dirt had been disturbed, but the fence still appeared to be in place. That morning when we walked out there together, we could see that there was a big dog or a wolf over there by the chicken coop. It was doing something, but I couldn't really understand what my eyes were telling me. Uncle Luther, also thinking it was an ordinary wolf, whistled sharply to get its attention, and then told it to skedaddle. That canine did not skedaddle. Instead, he just turned calmly and looked at us. And then he rose slowly from what had apparently been a squatting position in the shadows, and he turned to face us. I was seeing a humanoid figure covered in fur or hair. It was taller than me or my uncle, but probably not taller than every man who ever lived. He had a head like a wolf, mixed with a human. He had dog-like ears up on top of that wolfish, humanish face. The creature's tail was so large and so voluminous, I can't really compare it to anything else that I know of. I suppose you could say it was like a giant squirrel's tail, in that it was probably the same size as the entire rest of this creature. But the tail was not shaped like a squirrel's. I mean, it was a dog tail, just a very long one, with extremely thick and long fur. The creature was holding what looked like an axe handle, with the axe missing in one of his hand-like paws. I could see where he had been using the axe handle to pull up the wire fencing around the chicken coop at the bottom. It looks like we caught our chicken thief, and he was showing us how he got into the enclosure. Then how he covered his tracks, figuratively speaking. He bent the wires, and then he bent them back. That's a little bit more intelligent than I would have expected him to be, and I wondered if this was in fact not a dogman, but a werewolf. What I mean is I wondered if he possessed human intelligence. What the creature did next made it hard for me to answer my own question. He growled loudly, baring his teeth and posturing dramatically and frighteningly. Then he raced off toward some tree cover nearby. I ran directly back toward the farmhouse, where I got on the phone and begged my father to let me come home. I told him they had a werewolf out here, and it was bigger than Uncle Luther. My father was not hearing any of this. He told me that if I didn't want to work on the farm, then I had to go find myself some other job, but I wasn't going to just sit around all summer. So that day I went into town to look for work. The closest town is called Farmland, believe it or not. Farmland, Indiana. I suppose they named it that because it's surrounded by, you guessed it, farmland. In fact, I met this girl that day who worked in one of the stores in town. She told me that they have a saying in Farmland. Even when you leave Farmland, you're still going to be driving through farmland. That's all there is out there. You wouldn't think it would be a location that the Dogman could run around in, but I guess under cover of darkness it's different. I mean, there are patches and pathways of woodland in between the farmland and suburbs, but it isn't like a gigantic woodland as you find in most other locations where people are talking about the Dogman. In fact, that girl at the store mentioned the Dogman, and it took me by surprise. The two of us had a bit of a conversation about the creature. She said the Wisconsin werewolf was down all through that area. I asked her if the local dogman had extra bushy tails, and she gave me a look like she thought I was pulling her leg. I told her I wasn't kidding, but I don't think she believed me. So let's take that as a no. The dogman known to appear in that area do not, generally, have extra thick bushy tails. After I told her about our chicken thief, she told me that we should be willing to give the dogman chickens all it wants to keep it from getting too hungry. You know what a dogman eats when he can't find any chickens, don't you? She asked me. I answered no, and she got an unfortunate look on her face. Well, just endeavor to see that it doesn't eat you, darling. I went back home to the farm, and I was immediately quizzed about whether I had gotten a job or not. When I admitted my failure, Uncle Luther breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, I was afraid I was going to have to be the one staying up all night defending the chicken coop. Now, there was no place on the surface of Earth that I less wanted to spend that night at than the exterior of that chicken coop, and I told that to my uncle. I called my mother on the phone, and I whined pathetically. When she refused to help me, I started telling her which of my friends to give which of my belongings to, in the case of my early demise. She hung up on me in the middle of it, and Uncle Luther took me outside to show me how to use his firearm. I won't get into that here. Anyway, I was not feeling any more secure with the weapon, since I wasn't sure it was big enough to take a creature like the dogman down anyway. Uncle Luther showed me some very long reddish hairs and told me he fished them out of the wire fence. Then he shoved the hair in my face, and I'm telling you it smelled something awful. He gave me a chair and set me up next to the coop. Then he went and tied each of those hairs up, about 6 or 7 feet off the ground, in a bunch of different trees in a semicircle around me. When I asked why he was doing that, Uncle Luther told me that it was to make the dogman feel at home. He was a lot more concerned with being accommodating to a huge feral chicken thief than he was to his own nephew. I was mortified. This was bad news in several different directions. I was certain that if the dogman didn't get me, I'd probably fire that weapon through my foot or something. In fact, I slid it away from myself because I was afraid to even touch it. And so, surrounded by stinky dog hairs in every direction, I sat in my chair, shivering. It was a warm night. I was shivering because I was a coward. I was so frightened I didn't think I was ever going to be able to sleep ever again. That was why it was so surprising when the awful, chokingly bad smell woke me up coughing. Opening my eyes, I saw the big, hairy dogman staring back down at me from maybe a foot away. It was his breath that had choked me back to being awake. They should capture that odor and use it for smelling salts. The creature had initially seemed curious, but my coughing got him unhappy, and I got to see each row of oversized canines up close and personal, the ABC way. I saw his drool collecting on his lower lip before drip, drip, dripping down onto my chest and belly. I wanted to cry. I froze in shock and fear instead, though, as those seemed to be easier things to do in that moment. The dogman came right up to me and smelled my face. He smelled my nose. He smelled my eyeballs. He smelled the sweat dripping off my chin and down my neck. And then he smelled my belly, and he smelled my crotch. I think that was the point when I remembered how to cry. Suddenly, the dogman turned around away from me and walked a step or two away. I thought he was leaving, and I was quite happy about that. But that dogman was not leaving. That dogman was walking over to where he had left his axe handle on the grass. Then he bent down, and he picked it up, and I saw my life flash in front of my eyes. The dogman lifted that axe handle up, and I prayed to the Lord above for a merciful and quick ending. And then that Dogman brought that wooden axe handle down on the bottom of the chicken coop. He jimmied the fence open at the bottom and pulled it up far enough that he could crawl inside. Then he crawled out with a recently deceased fowl under one arm. After that, he used the axe handle to bend the fence back into place, and I watched as he ran off into the nearby woods. I ran into the bathroom inside the farmhouse, and I was sick for a long while. Before my Uncle Luther even got up, I was walking to town to figure out how to get back to my parents. Even if I had to sleep in a tent in the backyard, while the two of them had their endless fight with each other, it would still be a lot better than waking up to see the Dogman who used tools. Here's a guy who gives you all he's got. I'm talking about our new EP, Scott. Please join us in thanking Scott H. for becoming a channel member. This week, Lord willing, we're going to have 2 new Secret Uncensored stories, so it's a good time to join. Here with all the deets is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.